My husband secretly put everything in his mother's name before divorcing me. He froze when the judge read my evidence out loud. Some betrayals don't happen suddenly. They are planned. Slowly, quietly, patiently. Piece by piece, while you're still believing you're safe. I didn't realize I was being erased from my own life until it was almost complete. My husband wasn't just preparing for divorce. He was preparing to leave me with nothing. And worse, he was putting everything in his mother's name. But what he didn't know was simple. I had already seen enough. And I was already preparing for court. My name is Emily Carter. I am 35 years old and I live in Chicago, USA. And this is the story of how my husband tried to secretly take everything from me and ended up freezing in court when the judge read my evidence out loud. It started quietly, like most betrayals do. At first I noticed small changes. He became more distant, more secretive with his phone, more careful with conversations. He stopped talking about the future and started avoiding the present. Then came the paperwork. At first I didn't understand it. Bank documents, property transfers, legal forms. Everything slowly shifting. But not into his name. Into his mother's name. I asked him once, "What is all this?" He didn't even look up. "Just financial planning," he said. But something in his tone didn't match his words. Because financial planning doesn't avoid your wife's name completely. It doesn't erase her. It includes her. That was the first moment I felt it. Not suspicion. Confirmation. Something was happening behind my back. I started paying attention. Not emotionally. Practically. And what I found was worse than I expected. Joint assets being moved. Accounts being restructured. Ownership quietly changing. All directed toward one person. His mother. My mother-in-law had always been controlling. But I never thought she would become part of this. Until I heard her say something one evening. She doesn't need to know everything. And he agreed. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just a marriage breaking. This was a plan. Divorce wasn't announced. It was prepared. Silently. Like a trap already set in place. When I finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. He didn't even hesitate. "It's better this way," he said. "For everyone." I looked at him. For everyone except me. He didn't respond. Because he knew I was right. Then came the final shock. Legal documents arrived. Divorce filing. And every major asset listed under his mother's name. House. Savings. Investments. Everything. I had been removed before the fight even started. But what they didn't understand was simple. You can transfer ownership. But you can't transfer truth. So I prepared. Quietly. Carefully. Like he did. Except I wasn't hiding it. I was documenting it. Every transfer. Every inconsistency. Every timeline gap. Until I had enough. And then the court date arrived. The day everything would be decided. Or exposed. The courtroom was quiet. Formal. Heavy with expectation. My husband sat confidently at first. His mother beside him. Both believing they had already won. Because on paper, they had. The judge began reviewing the case. Financial records. Property ownership. Legal transfers. Everything seemed aligned with their version of reality. Until my lawyer stood up. And said one sentence. "We have additional evidence." The room changed instantly. My husband shifted in his seat. My mother-in-law stiffened slightly. But neither spoke. The judge nodded. Present it. And that's when it began. One document after another. One timeline after another. Each piece showing the same pattern. Not random transfers. Not coincidence. But coordination. Then came the final evidence. A recorded conversation. Clear. Undeniable. My husband's voice. Explaining the transfer strategy. And my mother-in-law's approval. The courtroom went silent. Completely silent. The judge leaned forward slowly and began reading parts of the evidence out loud. Each sentence heavier than the last. Each word stripping away their confidence. My husband's expression changed first. Confusion. Then realization. Then fear. Because he understood something too late. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was proof. The judge paused, looked directly at him, and continued reading. That was the moment he froze. Completely. Not moving. Not speaking. Not reacting. Because everything he built in secret was now being read aloud in public. And his mother, who once controlled every decision, didn't say a word. For the first time, she had no influence left. The judge closed the file slowly and said, "This court sees clear evidence of financial manipulation prior to divorce proceedings." The room shifted again. But this time, it wasn't in their favor. And I just sat there, calm, because I didn't need to speak. The evidence had already done it for me. The silence in the courtroom after the judge spoke wasn't normal silence. It was the kind that feels like something has just collapsed in real time. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. My husband didn't move. Not even slightly. Because for the first time, he wasn't in control of the story anymore. The story was controlling him. The judge flipped another page. This evidence indicates a coordinated transfer of marital assets prior to formal separation filings, he said calmly. Then he looked up, directly at my husband. Explain why the majority of assets were moved to your mother's name. That question didn't just land in the room. It stayed there. Heavy, unavoidable. My husband opened his mouth once, then closed it again. No answer came out. Because there was no innocent explanation left. His mother finally shifted beside him. She tried to speak. "This is a misunderstanding." But the judge raised his hand slightly. "Let the record speak first." And the record was already speaking louder than anyone else. My lawyer stood again. "We also have transaction timestamps showing the transfers were initiated shortly after the defendant began discussions about divorce," she said. Then she added, "And before the plaintiff was informed." That line changed everything. Because it wasn't just planning anymore. It was secrecy. The judge leaned back slightly. Now his expression was different. Less neutral. More serious. "This appears intentional," he said. "Not a question. A conclusion forming." My husband finally spoke. "I was just protecting my assets." I looked at him for the first time during the hearing and said quietly, "From your wife." Silence again. Because he couldn't answer that without admitting everything. The judge turned another page, then said something that made the entire room shift again. "There is also evidence suggesting the assets were placed under a third party's name to prevent equitable distribution." He looked up. "Your mother's." That word hit harder than anything before. Because now it wasn't just divorce. It wasn't just manipulation. It was deliberate shielding of property through family transfer. My mother-in-law finally reacted. her voice sharper now. We did nothing illegal. But even she didn't sound fully convinced anymore. Because confidence disappears when evidence speaks. The judge responded calmly. That will be determined legally. Then he paused and said, but this court is not blind to intent. My husband's hands tightened. He finally looked at me. Not with anger anymore. Not with control. But something closer to panic. Because he realized something too late. He didn't just lose the moral argument. He lost the legal advantage. The judge continued reading. More evidence. More records. More timestamps. Each one building a pattern that couldn't be ignored. And with every page turned, their confidence faded further. Then came the final moment. My lawyer stood again and submitted the last document. A full reconstructed timeline. Every transfer, every conversation, every decision. Connected, clear, undeniable. The judge took a long pause after reading it. Long enough that the room felt frozen. Then he spoke. This court finds sufficient evidence of premeditated asset concealment prior to divorce proceedings. My husband's face went pale. Not instantly, but gradually. Like reality was catching up to him slowly. The judge continued. This will affect the final settlement significantly. That was it. The turning point. Not emotional. Legal. Final. My mother-in-law stopped speaking completely after that. Because there was nothing left to argue against. Only consequences left to face. The hearing ended shortly after. Not with celebration. Not with shouting. Just closure beginning to take shape. As I stood up to leave, my husband finally spoke again. His voice lower now. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. I looked at him one last time. And replied. It only happened because you thought I wouldn't see it. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Not because I won everything, but because I finally stopped being part of something built on silence and secrecy. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. Not because everything was perfect, but because the truth was no longer hidden. And I realized something simple in that moment. Revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it just means exposure. And once people are exposed, they lose control of the story forever.